Hey everybody, welcome back. We're doing another brew session today. We're going to be doing an e-brew in a bag with my new electric brew panel. We'll be doing a session IPA. This is my fourth brew session using my electric panel. I've done 2 pot and a cooler methods on my double batch system, and now this will be my second using my smaller kettle doing e-brew in a bag. I'm going to take you through all the steps today. We're going to do the setup, what it takes with electric, all my water adjustments that need to happen, mash, pH, take a gravity reading, into the fermenter, the whole thing from start to finish. So keep watching. I'm mostly set up here. Typically I'll set up the night before, it just takes a little time off my brew day, but I want to show some of the steps and everything. I did go ahead and take the liberty though of milling up my grains, and I'll cover that recipe, I'll throw it up here in a second. I've already weighed out my water additions. Again, we'll be doing e-brew in a bag. I have the false bottom I picked up. I'll show how that goes into my kettle and everything. Today we're going to be brewing a Kiwi Express IPA. I picked it up as a kid a long time ago from Northern Brewer, like long before they sold out to E-BIAB. It's delicious. It's something different. That's how they advertise it. And if you've been drinking a lot of like West Coast IPAs and New England IPAs and want something that's just a real easy drinker, this is a great beer. Super light malt bill, all New Zealand hops. I'm going to throw the recipe up on the screen here in a second. So we're going to go ahead and get all my connections made to my kettle for the electric, get water going, my pump all set up, and I'm going to take you through all that as we continue on our brew session. All right, so we need to hook up our temp probe. On the back I have my electric plug, so that's the 30 amp in. So since I forgot to put my grate in before, I wanted to cover this real quick. So obviously to keep the grain bag off the hot element, I have my false bottom in there. In one of my other videos I show all the measurements and everything for that. But right at the top of this is 3 gallons. And I know, based off my measuring stick and just obviously using this kettle for literally the past 15 years, the bottom of this rivet is 6.75, so that gives me 3.75 gallons of space for my grain, which I'll cover more here in a minute when we start mashing. So you see on the bottom of my panel I have everything labeled out. These are my 3 temp probes, my 2 elements. This is for my 2 pump feeds. Today we'll just need 1 of each. I'm going to go ahead and use my boil PID. So temp probe in. That's in. We'll need to also want to use the wort pump side. Okay, we have 6.7 gallons of strike water. We'll go ahead and get my pump going with the hoses and the electric panel going here in a second, but we need to go ahead and treat our water. So before I kind of go into all the water additions that are going to contribute to the mash pH and the flavor profile, we'll talk about chlorine and chloramine. I'm on city water. Definitely have chloramine. I've had issues with it in the past. Previously I used just my carbon filter, but it was just getting like saturated and not being able to still filter out all the chloramine. So in addition to my carbon filter, which is still good to get all the sediment and other things out of the water, I still treat my water with a sodium metabisulfite tab. It's almost 10 gallons. 1 tab will do 20 gallons. This will be a half tab. So now to my water additions. I have a really soft water profile. I'm probably going to pull this up and go into a little bit more detail on it of how I came to this profile with this recipe. This is an extremely light malt bill. Looking at Palmer's Beer Cube, from experience, I know that I need to keep this water profile soft as possible, meaning keeping my calcium low. If I start to get up to 100 parts per million,
It's going to drown out all the hop flavor, so I'm keeping this as soft as possible, kind of like I would with like a Pilsner, like Helles or other lager. We want a soft profile. It is hoppy. I am not going to go up to like all the way to 4-1. I think that's kind of extreme, but you see down here that I am going to have more sulfate than calcium chloride. And over here with the calcium at 31, know that it's not at the recommended range, starting at 50. But for a light beer, that is a good number. So with my water profile up here provided by Ward Labs, and know that I did add a little bit of sulfate to this, as the sodium metabisulfite does add some sulfate, that these are the additions that contributes to this water profile. And then this is my lactic acid addition to drive down my mash pH. And again, since it's a lighter beer too, I'm shooting for a lower mash pH number.
So we're going to go ahead and continue to make our water additions. This will be 1 gram of Epsom salt, and this is 2 grams of gypsum, and then this is 4.4 milliliters of lactic acid. Since this is such a light beer, I have to do an acid addition to adjust that mash pH. I use John Palmer's Easy Water Calculator. I find it to be fairly accurate, and then I'll verify that when we come back here in a little bit after the mash and everything, and verify the pH. This kettle's small enough that I do have to do kind of like a sparge with my grain bag, like a top up, and I kind of do a sparge to get some more fermentable sugars scavenged. So with that too, that water also needs to be treated, and that's something to think about. If I turn around and just go with like tap water or just water from my hose or carbon filter, again, I still have the potential of having that chloramine in there. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and just use about a gallon of distilled water. It's going to work just fine. That small impact is only going to better contribute to the water profile I'm shooting for in this brew. If not, if I didn't use distilled water, I would want to just take and go ahead and treat that extra gallon of water, 2 gallons of water, keep it on standby in a cooler jug or something, and be able to go ahead and pull it back in. So things to think about in this. We'll go ahead and get my hoses on for my pump. Okay. Drains out the bottom of the kettle. In. Pump, and then back in my whirlpool port. Go ahead and open everything up. We're ready to start heating. Go. Okay, power on. We're just using the boil PID today. You can see we're about 67, 69 jumping around. That's groundwater temp. Not fantastic, but at least better than it has been. We're ready to go ahead and get this going. I'm going to start another timer too, because I want to see how long this takes to get up to my mash temp. Strike temp today is going to be 161.5, so we will do 162. Element done. We're going to go ahead and fire up our pump. Have our pump running, so just like with propane, it's going to help to go ahead and circulate that water on in the kettle, and it's going to heat up a lot faster for us. So we're going to let that go. Strike temp today was 161.5. We'll heat it up to 162 with the panel. We're going to have a little bit of loss anyway, so it's not a big deal. Beersmith does this automatically. There's an option in there which accommodates for what kind of equipment that you're using. Now I've found with my cooler that it's off. I still have to do a preheat on that. but when using my brew-in-a-bag kettle, it is pretty accurate with a stainless steel. So I used that on my previous session doing electric, and I hit my mash temp without issue. So we're going to go ahead and do that again today. Also with this, the added benefit is if I miss my mash temp a little bit, I can apply direct heat and it's not going to be an issue. 105 already, 106. So heating up really quick. We're going to get ourselves up to strike temp here and start mashing. I still love brewing on this kettle. It's the very first kettle that I started doing all grain in. I chose to go with brew-in-a-bag, and it's great because it's simple. I use this for all my test recipes, and it's really nice because it's still just a single vessel. It's less to clean up, less to put away, and everything. So, and this thing it's tried and proven, and I hit my numbers every time. And you can still make like great beer using brew-in-a-bag. The advantage of doing the e-brew-in-a-bag today is that we're going to be able to continually circulate that mash, which I've done too with propane, but I can use my electric panel to just hold it at 152 and basically set it and forget it. We'll, just spot check it a couple times in that hour, 60-minute mash, and we'll come back and be on to the next thing. Kill our pump. That killer element for right now. Alright, we're at strike temp. Very, very quickly, I might add. Let's go ahead and get our grain bag in, ready to go. Today we'll be performing a 60-minute single infusion mash at 152. This is 12.5 pounds of grain. So this is 12.5 pounds of grain. So this is the small issue that you run into with that dead space now. Now it's not technically dead space because there is water volume down there. So for my water additions and everything, I still have that volume in there, but as you can see, this is pretty thick. It's not like a traditional brew-in-a-bag where you'd be running like maybe 2 quarts per pound of water. Do have a plan to gain a little bit more room. It's just a little bit more effort. But as soon as we get this recirculating, it's going to be just fine. So make sure you don't have any dough balls here. We're creeping back down. I'm going to go ahead and fire up my pump, start recirculating. Go ahead and plug in my 152 mash temp. Start my element up. Go ahead and start my timer for a 60-minute mash at 152. I'll just give it a minute here to recirculate, leave the top off, and it should come down just fine. About 27 minutes. I did back this down to 151, just so I'm doing that like 150 to 152 range, because it was holding at like 152, 153. So again, we're holding at temp. I did have a little snafu there right when I went ahead and set up for my recirculation. With the PID, there's a little pause when you reprogram your new temp, and I had already turned the element on, so it started heating up to my strike temp rather than my mash temp. So, but I quickly noticed that my mash temp was going up instead of down, and had to do some ice to get back down to my mash temp. Definitely not preferable, but it happens, right? Really wish I'd be past that kind of at this point. You know, part of the reason to go into the electric brew panel is to have consistency and repeatability in recipes, but you know, things happen. I think part of being a good home brewer is being able to, you know, kind of get through those little mishaps that happen to the brew day. And in reading too, it's like, I know I'm not the only one. It happens. I know a while back my cousin said, you know, it's hard to mess up beer, and you know, there's days when I put that fully to the test. This was just a small thing, a little bit of ice, brought the mash temp back down, not a big deal. Got it down to the mash temp that I want to be at, 152, and you know, I'm going to finish mash out. Take a look at this. See the whirlpool. You know, we're recirculating all that water. We're sucking all that wort down through the grain bed, coming back in and going around with everything. I'll probably give this a little bit better stir here yet too, just to make sure it's getting through all the bigger clumps. Mash is complete. Turn off pump and element. That looks really good. Okay, we've been recirculating this. Just bump that real quick. Go ahead and pull off a sample here. We'll use this for our check our pH. This is really the only thing that I don't like having to do with brewing a bag. It's like the only step that kind of sucks, but it doesn't take that long. With all my ports and everything and probes, I gotta just be careful that I don't snag the bag on anything. If I had treated my water with the sodium metabisulfite, I'd go ahead and just capture it in like a container or a bucket and go to the container so I could go ahead and kind of do like my little sparge. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and just use some distilled. If I was doing a really large addition of distilled water, I would definitely make sure to incorporate it into my water profile calculations, but I should not use more than a gallon on this. And then, you know, for this being such a light beer, it's not going to be an issue. The Easy Water calculator has that option built in too. You know, and so then there's the debate too, like squeeze or not squeeze. I squeeze. So, and again, know that I'm not trying to like press the wort out of this. I'm just kind of moving it around and letting all that liquid come out because I want to get as much of the fermentable sugars out of this as I can. You know, just like if you're doing like a fly sparge or batch sparge, it's like the whole goal is you want to get as much efficiency as you can. Moving that around. See, it's like I still got quite a bit, you know, it's colored. There's quite a bit of that's wort yet that I want to try to capture. And this works well because I have to do a top up anyways on this kettle. So rather than just lose, you know, just be pouring just straight water in there basically, I'm able to kind of do a sparge, so to speak, and get this back. I just continue this until either I hit my top up volume, which is below my rivets on this, which I'm getting close to already. You know, I'm just satisfied that I've got everything I can get out of this. One gallon. Let this last little bit go up, but I'm not terribly concerned with it. So the last pull of this, I'll use that to check my pH. I forgot to go ahead and see like how many gallons I was at. So I know this is at 6.75, so I'll circle everything around, make sure everything's kind of like consistent, and then I'll pull another sample off, and then that'll be my gravity reading to determine my mash efficiency. Go ahead and run this. And no, I don't always, most of the time I'll go ahead and do a pH reading, but I'm not as concerned about grabbing my mash efficiency, you know, by checking my gravity. I usually just check brew house, but with doing the electric, and this still being kind of a new setup, I'm curious to see, you know, am I getting any better efficiency or not? I don't expect to necessarily, but so this is ready to go. I know my rivets are at 6.75, so I can, you know, do the math and everything on the calculators. We're going to go ahead and get this going to boil. All right, you see we're a little bit cooler now. I've added that colder water, so I want to go ahead and get heat on this right away. We got it set for 210 on the PID, so just below boiling. Go ahead and kick my wort pump on to recirculate that. So my grate's in here, my false bottom's in here, and I want to get it out. All my probes are on that side. Take this out, and you don't have to do this, but once the hops go in, they get all over this thing, and it's a real pain to clean, so just go ahead and pull it out. Okay, 2 samples. This one will be pH, this one's going to be a gravity reading. My Lamont tester. I found with this too already that even though it's supposed to be good for about 15 uses before you calibrate, that it's good for about every 2. You know, it's like off. Some distilled. So I have one test on it already, so it should be fine for this one. Turn it on, smack. Let's see what we're at here. Okay, my target was 5.5. I always just shoot it in the middle. 5.53, 5.54. And that looks like it's holding 5.54, so definitely within range, right where I want to be. It's always good to check your pH. Not only can it contribute to like off flavors, but more importantly is if you're getting like poor efficiency and you can't figure out why, among other multiple reasons, your mash pH could be off. So that's another reason too with doing water additions is to affect that mash pH. both these devices here, my refractometer and my pH meter ATC, so automatic temperature control. So if my sample's not at room temp, it's just fine. It'll adjust. Let's pour that thing down there. Making a mess. Anyway, so that's on there. I'm just going to let it kind of sit and settle for a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and check it. Take good notes. That's another big thing. If you're not doing that, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you're not, make sure you're taking good notes. I always, write everything down, where I ended up on volumes, where I ended up on pH, efficiency, like even when it's established. All right, so mash efficiency, we came out at 1.054, maybe 1.053. Regardless, for what that's supposed to be, that's really good. So Beersmith actually does all the math for you, tells you where you should be, even with your top up. It says I should be at 1.049. Again, we're at 1.054 at 6.75 gallons. I went ahead and ran that on the calculator for conversion. That's 78.98% mash efficiency. For any brewing, especially brewing a bag, that's great. I'm really, really happy with those numbers. And looking at this, we are almost at 210 because it's fast. All right. It is that quick. 210. We are going to go ahead and switch this to manual mode. And I want to say 45% was my key to a nice slow rolling boil. We're going to go ahead and just leave it at 50 right now. Went ahead and engaged. See my element is firing. I'll go ahead and let it bring up to boil. We're pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and kill my pump and lock this off. It's just coming up to a boil. I don't like to run my pump with a boil and run all the hops through it until I'm ready to sterilize and, or do a whirlpool. That's coming up. So this will be a 60-minute boil. We are there. So my 60-minute edition is going to be Nelson. I'm not going to go ahead and name all these New Zealand hops because honestly I don't know how to pronounce all of them. Nor am I going to pretend to be intelligent enough to try to pronounce all of them. I'm pretty good with all the hops, but not these. They taste good though. 60 minutes, we're at boil. First edition, half an ounce. Start my timer. 60 minutes. She's getting a little rigorous now. Take it back down to my 45% on manual mode. We're looking really good on this. Again, you can do this all on propane. I started brewing a bag on a stovetop using like 2 burners and a hook in the ceiling. Like, it can be done. The advantage of the electric is it's a lot more efficient. And you have a lot more control kind of where you're at on your temps and stuff versus kind of trying to guess where you're at with your valve and how much heat you're actually applying and everything. And I really like just kind of having everything like right here to see, like all my controls, all my stuff is just right here to work from. But we're going to let this go. Our next edition is until 15 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and prep the rest of our hop editions. Already have my hops all laid out. These are all 10-minute editions, a little broken up. It's my little dry hop pack. I'm already out, kind of got all my equipment out for brew day. So use my vacuum saver to go ahead and make this so that I'm not messing around measuring stuff. I can simply add it at my 1 week mark when I'm fermenting. Ta-da! Probably asking, Ben, why do you have a fermenter full of beer sitting out? So this is going to be our yeast for today. Our recipe is just a Chico strain, so USO5, 1056, WLP 001. This is USO5, obviously in its liquid form, and nothing is better for a yeast starter than beer. So we're going to go ahead and pull about a pint off of this and repitch that here in a minute. So that's all sanitized. I'm going to go ahead and sanitize that. Take my table down. Give this a good shake. Get these moving around. Now, as long as it's like a similar beer, doing this works just fine. I pitch on yeast cakes all the time. It cuts down the cost with yeast and everything, and then too, they're fresh. This is all newly multiplied yeast. I find when I do this too, it's just like a yeast starter, so it takes off extremely fast, and I'm talking like same day taking off. That should be good. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this off. All right. It's ready to go here in a little bit. Right at 15 minutes at wharf lock. Just hit 10 minutes. My 10-minute additions. Stir. I love that smell. Hop additions are complete at 10 minutes. That's the last of the hops for this recipe. There's no flame out or no whirlpool hops. So we have 6 minutes left on boil. So I need to start looking at sanitizing my chiller. Two options today. I had my old trusted immersion chiller built by Stetson Engineering and my counterflow chiller. This is almost essential on my larger 22-gallon kettle just to get that much volume down to pitching temps. But the immersion chiller works really well in this smaller kettle. I'm probably going to use today. There's less hoses to hook up, less of a mess, and again, just kind of the nice thing about using this smaller kettle for a single batch, it's just simple, there's less to clean, and this helps me do that. This does not fit in a sanitizing bucket. At about 2 minutes here, I'm going to go ahead and drop it in and get it sanitized and kind of prep for my chill. Just hit our 2-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and get my immersion chiller in. Again, now, I have all my ports on this side, so I have to be really careful so I don't bend a probe. While that's going this last couple minutes, see, I lost my boil. That's pretty typical, so I'm going to go ahead and just bump it up here to 55%. Need to sanitize my lid. Not critical, I'm going to throw it on there when it's still boiling, but just, another measure to keep everything sanitary. All right, we just wrapped up. Kill that, kill my element, right? We need to start chilling. So this again too is where, even with the immersion chiller, I'm going to run my chill water through here, which is nice. The groundwater has gotten a lot cooler, but I'm also going to run the pump so that it's running through my whirlpool arm and cycling all that water around. It really aids in your chill times. Also the runoff on this, the initial runoff, I'm going to go ahead and fill this bucket so I can scavenge basically some heated water for cleaning, kind of reutilize that. Open up my ports again. Open up my chill water. Other options with this too, I've actually started to clean the kettle and then use the electric element to heat the cleaning water up. Sometimes too, I have like a little 1,000-watt heating element, so I'll start cleaning water up on the side and bring that up to temp with that. Still, both everything's GFCI, so totally safe to do, or at least for me. So running GFCI. Happens to the best of us. All right. You're at 131.7. It's actually a little bit hot. That's gonna be great. Again, repurposed. I don't have to worry about heating it. It's ready to go. In chilling right now, I'm running my pump wide open. Using the immersion chiller, I want to run it wide open to get as much work as I can to cycle around that immersion chiller and get as much surface area as possible to aid in chilling. I have my sanitizing bucket ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and get sanitizing solution in my fermenter and get that prepped and ready to go. Now we're still chilling. PID is reading 85 degrees, so it's coming down real nice. Again, really nice having everything right here in the panel and the probe in the tank. I can see right where I'm at. So just a little bit of time, we'll be ready to get to the fermenter. Fermenter is sanitizing. I'm going to go ahead and sanitize my spoon and my oxygen wand for my oxygenation to work. Go ahead and start sanitizing my container for my yeast, and then my connector that's going to go on the top of the fermenter. Right at about 70, 71 degrees. I don't think it's going to get any colder than that based on this groundwater. If that was a concern, I could always run chilled water through it with a aquarium pump, but I'm not that worried about that today. We'll get it into the fermenter here, and it's nice and cool in the garage, so I'll let the fermentation take off in here. So let's get it transferred over. Kill my pump. Close that valve, close this valve. I'm going to leave this one open for right now. Need to get another gravity reading to see where we finished out at. Right, I've shut my pump down. Oh, alright. I took my immersion chiller out. I'm going to go ahead and pull a reading off of this, so I'm sanitizing my measuring stick right now. I could do it in the fermenter, but it's not nearly as accurate. And being that this is still kind of like new with the electric, I want to see exactly where I finished out with conversion and then my final gravity before we transfer this over. I've literally been recirculating this, so I should have no issues with just going ahead and grab that. Put that back on, open. I've sanitized that. Trusty measuring stick. Usually I wouldn't do this. I just take it in the fermenter and make my best guess. It's just a little, maybe like 5.1 gallons. Should be able to reclaim most of that with this kettle, just the way that I have it set up. One of the very few disadvantages I've noticed so far with this is just, my pump on and off is up there. So I gotta basically close my pump off, come over or turn my pump on, and then open the valve to get into the fermenter. If I had a nice burn rate or something, I wouldn't have to deal with that as much because it's all kind of right there. Not that big of a deal. Yeah, that's right at 5 gallons into the fermenter. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. Sanitize funnel. Yeast starter, you see yeasties in there. Probably a little bit of sediment too. I'm gonna go ahead and shake that up. If you want, you can kind of pour off some of the stuff on top and then capture it, but I don't worry too much. Just throw it in. That should go really good. I need to oxygenate this. So we'll hit this for, ooh, that's getting close to being out. We'll hit this for 30 to 45 seconds with pure oxygen. That is done. Rotation lock. There it is. Mission complete. All right, we got the gravity reading. This is set for a minute, so we're going to go ahead and check this and see where we finished out at. We came out at 1.062 on the final gravity reading. My measuring stick read 5.1, which accounts for the half gallon of dead space in the bottom of the kettle, so I'm actually at 5.5, 5.6, because I do have 5 gallons into the fermenter. That puts us at about 75%. So mash efficiency was 78.9. Those are great numbers, especially for brewing a bag. I'm really happy with the electric panel. This is the 4th brew session I've had on it. A couple minor hiccups, nothing that I can't figure out. Today we brewed a session IPA, 55 IBU, about 5.5%. With this panel, I'm actually getting better efficiency, so we're probably a little bit heavier than that on alcohol, which isn't a bad thing. We went through water treatment, measuring mash pH. We took a gravity reading so we could determine our mash efficiency, and took another gravity reading for our final gravity. Into the fermenter, oxygenating the wort, everything from start to finish. If you like what you've seen here today, give me a comment below and make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.